It seems like sort of
Could be a book.
No, right now it's kind of like the annual report.
Well, this is like
year in
Cliff
review,
Notes.
Yeah.
You couldn't get it any. There's a lot more to it.
Okay, we're back on. We just talked about taking King World public, but off camera, you had mentioned that you wanted to talk about the actual beginnings of King World.
Yeah, King World. My dad worked for a company called Official Films, and Official Films in the '60s was a very powerful little syndication company, and did some really great things. As a matter of fact, they produced a show in syndication that was so successful today that it spawned networks, and that's a show called Biography. My dad ran the sales for Official Films, and the host of that show was Mike Wallace. It won the Peabody Award. It was very prestigious. And anyway, my dad did a great job selling. He was a phenomenon when it came to selling. And but when they sold the company to an accountant type guy, he started kind of nickel and diming my dad on his expenses. That wasn't the way to work with my dad, So here's a guy that was in his 50s. He had a lot of health issues. He had a number of heart attacks. And his philosophy, and I don't agree with this one, but his philosophy was that he'd rather live 1 year as a lion than 1,000 as a lamb. And I wished he'd thought it differently, because he could still be here, although he'd be getting pretty old by now. But even so, it would be he would have been around a lot longer than 59. And at this point, we're talking about he was 51, 50, almost 52, and he walked out. He had no job. We weren't really wealthy. We were, not wealthy at all. He had just come out of the hole on some other deal that he'd worked on. And so he'd been there a few years. Things were working really well. And, but, he just couldn't work under those conditions. And one of the shows the Official Films distributed was The Little Rascals. And they had already notified Hal Roach Studios they weren't going to continue to pick up the distribution rights. And I think they paid about $50,000 for it, okay? My dad, when he walked out, contacted the lawyer for the Hal Roach Studios and said that he was leaving, and that he told him that that the company has already decided not to continue with distributing The Little Rascals. And he said, I'd like to. Now bear in mind, they had, it was about a $50,000 deal, and my dad told him he'd give him $300,000. Well, the lawyer he was very excited, couldn't wait to call the people at Hal Roach, and they immediately got on a plane and flew to New York. And we're talking 1964, near the end of '64. The jets weren't quite as good as they are today, so it was a real long trip to go from LA to New York. And they wound up meeting, my dad, the lawyer for Hal Roach Studios, and executives that ran it. And my dad told him he didn't have any money. And they flipped out, literally, And they were, the guys, little short guys, My dad was 6'3" and a very powerful guy. And they start yelling at the lawyer, and they yelled at him for like 40 minutes, And my dad's sitting there, and he can't believe that the lawyer told him to come out without doing any, any qualifying at all, And finally, my dad said, when are you going back? And they looked at him like, are you still here? Crazy man? Anyway, they start yelling at him a little bit, And he says, no, seriously, why don't you stay one more day? Veins popping, And no, he said, seriously, stay one more day. Give me the rights for 24 hours, and if I don't bring you $50,000 before the end of tomorrow's day, then you get your rights back. What do you have to lose? You're here. So they agreed. My dad called Fred Thrower, president and general manager of WPIX Tribune, which owns Channel 5 out here, and a lot of other stations around America and newspapers. And in any event, Fred Thrower loved my dad, and my dad called him up and said, "Fred, I have to see you." And he said, "Charlie, under any other time, any other conditions, I'd clean everything off." He said, "But I've got the brass in from Chicago, and the owners, the family are in, so I can't see you this week." And my dad said, "Fred, you don't understand. I have a one-day sale here. I have to see you." Anyway, he convinced him to meet with him. He went in, sold him the Little Rascals for 3 years for $50,000, and came back to the hotel, put it on the coffee table, and said, "That's the Tribune. That's the Daily News. You can take that to the bank, and I'll pay you the rest over 36 months." That's how King World started. The #1 first-run company in the world started that day, and he had $6 on him. So we took a page out of my dad's book when, you cut, that was in 1964. If you went to, January of '83, we bought Wheel of Fortune for $50,000. So it's kind of full circle, and again, it's taking a page out of my dad's book. So that's how our business began, and that's how it grew into the biggest first-run company in the world.
Do you think what do you think he would have thought to see the company?
He would have said, "Great job," and then he would have been great to work with. I mean, I just can't imagine what he would do. I mean, seriously, he probably would have bought the Empire State Building. Everything was, achievable for him. He always went bigger and bigger. So I think he would have done a lot more with the money than my brothers and I did. We didn't do very well there. We just kept making it. So.
Well, in terms of your business sense or what you wanted to do with the company, did you see expansion? Did you want to go global? And where did you see this company headed?
We were a very small company that we had. It was a rocket ship. I was running literally from one deal to the next. Going over the productions and picking new shows and sitting down and working on what we were going to do next season with my brother and our management team. As we started hiring people, all of a sudden the group got bigger and bigger, what we need to do in next year and the following year, and just analyzing the marketplace and what competition was coming, and then obviously changing our rate cards and all of the promotion and the publicity and the contestant searches. And it was a lot of work. And then going public and dealing with the public community, opening new companies and literally hiring all those people. But it really was still a small business. Even after we had the top 3 shows in America, we literally, I think, just before we sold it, we had about 150 employees. Now, we started when we went public on the NASDAQ. We came out in December of '84 at $10, and there hadn't been a new IPO, initial public offering, that succeeded in 3 years. When we went out on our roadshow to go present our company to the different fund managers, Payne Weber took us out, and another name no one would know now, but in any event, they took us out and said, the only way this company won't go public is if the market goes down 100 points. Well, it went down over 100 points during our roadshow. But we still went forward. We came out at $10, and we went up to I think half a dollar at the end of the day on the NASDAQ. And then it continued to go up and up and up. And 6 months later, we were at $40, and we split 2 for 1, and we, continued to, we needed to have more stock out there because there wasn't, there were major funds, these financial groups that wouldn't buy because it was too small, and because they had literally hundreds of billions of dollars, and in any event, so we were splitting the stock so there would be more available, and we went 2 for 1, and so we're 20. That was 6 months after July of '85, and then come around a little over 1 year to September of '86, we're back up to 45, and we split 3 for 1 and moved to the New York Stock Exchange. So we went, from $10 to what would that be? Let's see, 40, and we split 2 for 1. What would that turn out to be? About $90 a share, something like that. Anyway, it was phenomenal. Less than 2 years, and the company went public at $50 million, and I think that made it in less than 2 years. It was now a $450 million company. Okay, but we still were a little company.
Did it change the autonomy that you had, the fact that you now had shareholders and you were a public company?
They definitely, whispered in your ear, They wanted us to buy things, and the truth is we were a little company that we couldn't do any more than we were doing. If I started buying other companies, we would have gone out of business. I think you couldn't keep the shows up where they were and keep expanding. We were expanding within our business, Like I said, we had 11 people in Summit, New Jersey, and, a year later we probably had 50 or 70 people, and we're still growing, So, they had a pretty strong say, but we ultimately, and this is where our experience came in. It's where my dad's philosophies came in. We said we stood up to those major fund managers and said, no, we're not going to do it. And I actually had a luncheon in New York to explain why we wouldn't do it, And it was actually kind of funny. We literally were public, I think, for 3 months when they were telling us they thought it was risky to have all their eggs in one basket, And so they said diversify. And my brother and I were in Florida going through all these companies. And I'm talking about, bushel baskets of companies, And we're looking at them and analyzing, no. Finally, I went back to New York and I had this luncheon with all of them. And I said, you do have a big ear with the management. I said, but you have to understand that that's a little dangerous for you. I said, because you need good management to put your money in and invest in. And if you push us too much, this company won't be as successful for you as an investment. And I said, we heard you. I looked at all these companies. And I said, when my brother and I were looking at them, we saw very quickly why they were up for sale. And that's because they diversified badly. And I said, we're not going to do that. We're having this luncheon because we don't want you to, we don't want you to be upset and leave. But if you don't believe this company has a future that warrants a big investment or an investment in this company, then we appreciate your tremendous support, and you should sell it. And I don't say that in any way a disrespectful way. I said, I really mean it. Your job, your fiduciary responsibility for your clients is to get and put your dollars in companies you believe in the most. And if you don't believe at this point, because we've had this incredible growth, if you don't believe in it, you absolutely have a legal responsibility to sell our stock. And somebody said, would you sell? I said, look, I'm prejudiced, so, it doesn't matter what I think. Now, what would you do? I said, are you kidding me? I said, I wouldn't even consider selling. I'd be trying to buy as much as I could with both hands. There's not enough stock here. So I try and get as much. If you get out, you'll never get back in. That's what I think. Now, I could be wrong, you know. Anyway, it worked out, you know. But we really were a company that was constantly under siege, you know. And so when we moved to the New York Stock Exchange, excuse me, in a short period of time, we wound up on the S&P 500. And the entertainment sector on the S&P 500 were made up of 4 companies. It was Disney, Time Warner, Paramount Viacom, and King World. Now, we had a market share of all of the shows in the market. Our share of products sold in the market was more than all 3 combined. They were actually in Washington with the networks and everybody else saying that King World was a monopoly, you know. 150 employees, okay? And I said to, actually, it was Ed Markey, who was chairman of the House Subcommittee on Communications. I said, if you gave an employee of all those 3 competitors combined, every one of them a gun, they'd have the 5th largest army in the world. I said, we're not even remotely close to a monopoly. I said, they're upset because their shows don't work. And our shows are working. That's it. We spend a lot of money in the community and with our clients to make sure their investment succeeds. And it's working. It's working on every level. Their shows aren't. You want the list of all of them? They're trying to change the rules so that they get rid of us. Okay, but they can't do it in the market, so maybe you can help them, you know. And anyway, the rules did change, and that's why King World wound up, you know, merging with CBS. But up until that point, 1984, 5, 6, and so on, we were constantly under tremendous, you know, pressures to keep the company growing. And, you know, at times, I'm sure you heard about Oprah, whether she was going to retire or not. You know, that was 40% of our company. You know, we were able to continue to renew her, and, you know, it was a great relationship. I mean, let's face it, you know, she respects the fact that my brother and I found her on a local show called AM Chicago. We told her that we were going to rename it Oprah Winfrey Show and make her a big star. You know, is that right, Mr. King? Yes, that's correct. Well, the Mr. stopped a long time ago, but we still have a good relationship. But
what did you see in her?
You know, she was amazing. You know, first thing we saw, she was actually winning in the market on a station that Wheel was on, and the Chicago station WLS was an ABC owned and operated, which means the network owned the station. And ABC was in the cellar. So WLS was really, out of like 5 stations, they were 5th at a lot of time periods. And when they put Wheel on, we took the time period from like an 8 share to like a 40 share in Chicago. I mean, that was a big deal. And there was another show in the morning, this AM show, that took it from, you know, 5th to number 1, and it was against Phil Donahue, who was the king of daytime at that time, and it was produced locally there. So here it is, a local show that was syndicated nationally from Chicago, and this upstart woman beats him. So that was what really brought her to our attention. And the general manager, who's now the president of Fox Broadcasting, Dennis Swanson, he brought her from Baltimore into Chicago, and through a producer he hired from Baltimore, the Westinghouse station, who produced a local show called Everybody's Talking, hosted by this woman called Oprah Winfrey. So Deborah moved to Chicago to produce AM Chicago, and she said, you know, this show has got a lot of problems. We have to change it. And he said, what do you want to do? She said, I have this host in Baltimore who would be perfect. So Debbie DeMeo convinced Dennis to bring Oprah to Chicago. They put her on, and she immediately became a number one. So that was our first introduction. And then Dennis, who was a brilliant guy, incredible broadcaster, he just kept telling us how great she was. And we said, well, send us, we're looking for another show. Obviously, we're always looking for something. And they sent the show to us. And I must admit, initially it was shocking because they sent us shows that were a little rough. It was small production, so it was kind of hokey, And the first show I saw, Oprah had everyone on the stage, and everyone in the audience was there because someone in their family was shot to death. And it was the audience was completely black, and so were all the other guests. And there were it was a very heavy show, and she had a number of other shows like that. And we talked to Dennis. He said, "What do you think?" And we said, it might be just a little too rough. And quite honestly, it really feels like a public affairs program. And he said, "I'm telling you, she's great," and this and that. And he said, "Well, what shows are you talking about?" And we told him that the different titles. And he said, "Oh, look, that's not the only kind of stuff she does." And we said, "Well, what else does she do?" And so he started going through some of them. He said, "Well, why don't you send those to us?" So we went through 3 weeks of shows, So the initial ones were kind of shocking, but she jumped through, And then she did soap opera stars at a local mall, and different celebrities like that, and it really was fun. So it really worked out perfect that the first shows would be so, dramatic, And so, we were kind of jarred at first, and because we were looking for an entertainment show. If you looked at most AM shows, they were like Regis and Kelly, okay? And because Regis was a local show in New York, okay? And that's what most of them looked like. And they had a lot of them all over America. Her show was the only show like Phil Donahue. Her show was almost identical to Phil's in the beginning. And you asked us, how do these shows continue? Well, Oprah's show is not even remotely close to the Phil Donahue show today. It's evolved into so many other elements, including the book club and the Angel Network and some of the other things that she's done. So her show is completely a new, exciting program today versus what it was 5 years ago. And but in any event, we really liked what we saw, and at that point we said, we want to do it.
Was it a hard sell nationally?
Yeah, it was. Every new show is, though. I never had a show that people said, this is it, except for one, and that was the Roseanne show, not the sitcom, the talk show. They said, "This is unbelievable," and I said to Raj, "I'm a little scared. I don't know. What do you think?" He said, "Absolutely." Well, it crashed and burned. So the ones they liked didn't seem to. I didn't have many, but that didn't seem to work.
For Oprah, what was the sales pitch for that?
Well, it was she had a great talk show, and our pitch was that Phil Donahue, although he's incredible, there's never been anything else compatible. And we think, just like Wheel, there were other, Jeopardy made sense to fill out the block. There should be more talk shows, and we think she's better, and of course most people thought we were smoking grass. These guys are insane. Bring this heavy black woman to go up against the king of daytime. Well, they saw that was wrong.
Were there racial issues in terms of selling to parts of the country?
Yeah, there were some, without question. But I will say that after looking at her show a lot, there was one thing that stood out for my brother and I. Phil Donahue did a great show on women's issues. He was a little like a college professor, you know. He talked about the issues. Oprah talked about women's relationships, and she talked about a lot of them that women at home had that were just like hers. Oprah had a lot of things that were tough to go through, and when America, you know, met her, they just fell in love with her, and she's very honest about all of it. And it was. I have to say, I have tremendous admiration for her ability to rise above some just unbelievably horrific, you know, experiences, to become an amazing leader for all people, but specifically helped a lot of women, and I think changed an awful lot of things. I mean, you know, battered women and some of the infidelities and teenage drug problems and teenage pregnancy, they didn't have those on there. There weren't a lot of shows doing that. You know, it was Regis and Kelly, or at the time Kathy Lee, and you know, and Merv Griffin. You know, he was fantastic, but he didn't do it. Neither did Mike Douglas. There was only one show doing it, but not like her, and so we thought she was pretty special, and of course, I think, without question, I think that's an understatement. It's probably the single reason that Obama will get the nomination.
Going on, you had mentioned it before, but talk a little bit about the merger with CBS and how that came about. And I believe Viacom was kind of part of that as well. At that time, or?
No, we made a deal with CBS, and you know, every time there's a story, you have to go back. And the truth is, you know, you'd need, you know, there'd be a book on the mergers. You know, we literally had deals with a number of companies. You know, at one point, we were going to merge with New World, and Fox bought them. Okay, and then we had made a deal with Ted Turner. Excuse me. And someone told me he was just on Charlie Rose literally a week or two ago, and he was talking about the different things, and that he should have merged with the King Brothers or King World. He said that was the biggest mistake of his career because he lost his company. But we had made a deal to merge, and over the weekend, Gerald Levin from Time Warner decided to buy them. So our deal didn't happen again. And if you were to go back through some of the different newspaper articles and trades and what have you, you'd see that every one of those stories were big stories. But you know, it obviously was great for Time Warner, but it wasn't too hot for us. So we had a lot of those scenarios. You know, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. You know, and I remember asking somebody at Wall Street, "What is your point here? Are you trying to tell us something?" But in any event, so when we finally got around to a deal with CBS through our banker at that time, was the Allen Company. Prior to that, we had Payne Weber, and then we had First Boston, and we had a lot of them, and we had a lot of different potential deals, and we wanted to merge because the rules were changing. And the truth is that King World, although it was the biggest independent television company in the world, we were literally the white buffalo. We couldn't survive by ourselves with all the different changes in the regulations. The financial interest rules that said networks could now own a television programming. You know, Congress thought that that would be a small change. Well, we were lobbying, and we kept it off for years, but as soon as that changed, our number one client was immediately bought by Disney. And of course, you know, Disney has their own product they want to put on their station. So the idea of trying to put new programs on, we could renew the hits, but we wouldn't get anything new. And that would just be a matter of time before, you know, they would potentially go down. And so we really needed to merge with a broadcast group. And we made the deal with Mel Karmazin and Allen Company, and it was pretty nerve-wracking because when it was announced, the SEC wanted CBS to make some changes in their accounting, and they used our merger for that. And so what should have taken only a few months wound up going from March of '99 when we announced it, to literally the end of the summer. And there's a time ticking on how long a merger can be held together, and if you don't do it by a certain time, you're in trouble. Well, Roger and I were flying privately to New York on Labor Day weekend, and we got a call. And actually, no, Roger was back east. I was flying with a group of executives to New York, and I got a call on the plane, and immediately, by the way, I thought it was the worst. I wasn't thinking of a merger. I thought somebody in the family, So thank God that didn't happen. But Roger told me, he said, the deal's off. And I said, what do you mean? He said, Viacom just bought CBS. So now we land. I happened to be with Martin Short. We were launching in the new show we were doing, Martin Short Show, and he was going back to New York with his manager, Bernie Brillstein, who is part of the Brillstein Gray, which had, all the major superstars, and one of them was Martin Short. So anyway, we're flying back with Bernie, and he hears what's going on, and I'll never forget when we landed in Teterboro, the cars are waiting. Marty said, "I don't know what happened, but I know it'll be good for you." And he hugs me. I go, "Thanks, Marty." and Bernie said, "Look, I know, this was a pretty big announcement, so don't worry, we won't say anything." I said, "Good. I knew that wouldn't happen." So as I see the car going away, I see Bernie with the phone up to us. Because knowledge in this town is power. And it was the biggest thing in the world. Viacom buys CBS. And in any event, it did stop our merger for a while. We had to refile. And it was we almost wound up bridesmaid again, because the SEC said, your shareholders didn't approve Viacom, they approved CBS. We said, look, they'll love it more now. No, you have to refile and do this whole thing. And we got to the point where by November, they said it was, I think it was, believe it or not, I think it was the 15th of November. A Friday, if we didn't finish by the end of the business day, Friday, November 15th, New York time, we'd have to refile, and the deal never would have gone through. We got everything approved by 2:00 Friday, so it was finally done, and then Monday, the 18th, King World was taken off the New York Stock Exchange. It wasn't there, but we still had to go through the merger with Viacom, which took another 6 months. So May of 2000, they all completed, and it worked out great for everybody.
Did you want to stay on?
No, I didn't think it could be any better than running your own store. I think it worked for Roger. He liked it. But a lot of the things that I wanted to do that job wasn't available anymore. I mean, I worked with producers and, Wall Street community, and we didn't have to, my brother and I, it was pretty easy to make decisions. There was nobody between the bank vault and my brother and I, so whatever we wanted to do, we could do. And I knew that wouldn't be the same in the future. It was, very very corporate. You know how a lot of these companies run now. They are very, very, I'd say, profit oriented, and they also are, more along the bean counter concept, and that just wouldn't work for me, But Roger's job was actually better, because he not only had total freedom to sell, but he also was able to pick up, the CBS product. So he was able to sell off-network programming and everything else. So for the most part, he didn't particularly like the budgets and stuff, So he didn't show up for the budget meetings.
Did he consult with you on things like the Dr. Phil, that kind of thing?
No. I have to be honest. I was consultant after, and I had a great contract for 7 years, starting in 2000. But no, I was blessed that we were able to get off the treadmill a little bit, diversify my assets, wound up, instead of a company totally dependent on 3 shows, to a company that had, a studio, a chain of TV stations, radio stations, 500,000 billboards, the best cable networks in the business. So, strongest first-run television company in the world. So as far as I was concerned, from an investment point, it was great. And I was somewhat of a newlywed. I got married again in July of '97, and I have young children. So I was able to kind of step off the treadmill and enjoy them and do other things, because running King World was all-consuming. Really was, and it never seemed easy. I got to be honest. No matter what happened, everybody saw the dark clouds. NBC would renew ER for 4 years, and they were phenomenal. We'd renew Oprah for 4 years, and everybody would say she won't renew after that.
What was your favorite part of the job?
Well, there were a lot of great things about it. King World really did have tremendous integrity, and we really, really strove to be the best we could be. We didn't look at stations as, just a place to put product. We really had a great relationship with them, and we used to say, look, we got to get the renewal out of the way, because the only time we're on the opposite sides of the table are during the renewal. So let's get that out of the way. And then we can work on the same side of making sure this is the best investment you can make. And as Roger would say, as soon as I renew them, if I renew them for 2 or 3 years, the next week I'm working on the renewal, And we didn't look at it as sell them and kind of screw them, And I'll never forget, after the first time we did a long-term renewal, and this station said, because it was a big commitment to renew Wheel Jeopardy for 4 years. You're talking about one market could be 40 million, okay? Not including, some of the other, the advertising time and the media buys and what have you. So it was a big commitment, And I'll never forget, right after we did it, this guy said, all right, so now that we've renewed, are you going to spend more money on the show, or are you going to cut back? I said, well, I'm going to cut back for sure. I mean, what, are you kidding me? I said, we got this great commitment, and, we're going to cut this thing back right to the bone, baby, They go, what? I said, yeah, man, haven't you seen our company? It's high earnings, baby. I said, we're thinking of putting Roger on the show as the host. We could save a lot of money doing that. And the guy's going, you can see he's terrified. And I said, why are you listening to my competitors? I said, they're jealous because you're renewing our shows. So they're trying to get you not to do it. Well, the truth is, we're never going to hurt you, okay? We got the renewal out of the way. What can we do? And forget those people, will you please? And, and of course, the first time, was the hard one. Then after that, they said, there's no problem, And when companies would do research, or even a lot of publications would do investigative stories on what companies did the industry think were the best. And I was proud of the fact they said, look, there's King World, and then there's everybody else. He said, there's nobody close. Because we really did consider ourselves a partnership. If ABC didn't work well in New York, that hurt me. And if it did work in New York, not only would that help continue for our business to grow, but we could also sell new shows. And it was more fun too, by the way. We're talking about
just how was at the top of.
Oh yeah, what were the great things? It was exciting to work with. My brother and I were big fans of TV. We worked with the biggest stars in the world, and we worked with the biggest television stations, the biggest advertisers. There wasn't anybody that we didn't deal with. That was for a family from the Jersey Shore. That was pretty heady stuff. And then on top of that, I'll never forget. My brother and I weren't overwhelmingly great students, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't go to college right away. I waited a year, but when I really applied myself in school, I had some problems that I had a few teachers help me with. One was English, another was reading. That first year going into junior college was the absolute greatest thing for me, because it gave me tools to really start to succeed in college. Those tools really helped me not only succeed in college, which made me feel a lot more confident, but it made me a lot more sophisticated. And I graduated on the dean's list, which was pretty cool. And it really showed me where to find answers. If I had a problem, I could go and research it. And that absolutely helped tremendously. But I do remember our first convention in Los Angeles. Roger and I were there with a couple other employees and my brother Bob. And we were standing in the lobby of the Bonaventure Hotel, which is a beautiful lobby, but it's a strange place for a convention because there are just not enough elevators to take care of people. So there's these constant little, gridlocks for to get from one part of the hotel to another. And I told Roger, I said, Raj, don't turn around now, but the program director for the ABC affiliate in San Francisco is standing behind. Don't turn around. I said, he's right there. And I said, and the O&O program director in Chicago is standing next to him. I said, can you believe that? And anyway, we were just really awed by it. We grew up watching TV stations, their news. If you met an anchor walking around town, it's like you just met a movie star. You know what I mean? And now here we are dealing with some of these managers, and I remember saying to Roger, I said, Raj, we never were going to be a professional lawyer or doctor or maybe even, a financial guy. I said, but we have a great profession. I said, we're broadcasters. And I said, and you know something? We have a profession that's actually better than theirs. Not to knock theirs, but we have a better one. And he said, why is that? I said, I've met lawyers, met bankers, financial people. I've met doctors that have left medicine, law, and Wall Street community to go into broadcasting. But I've never met a broadcaster to go into medicine, law, or finance. So I think that means we have the best. And then, of course, obviously, you know, Roger started dealing with, and I started dealing with the general manager, and then all of a sudden we started dealing with the presidents of the group. And then we started hearing names we never heard before. I said, who's that? Oh, he's the owner. Our contracts got so big that, you know, renewals, I mean, Warren Buffett had to approve the Oprah renewal. You know what I mean? It was that big. So, so it was really, you know, just a really, really exciting, you know, run to climb to that high of a level in a profession that we just revered, and it was a great honor.
Do you miss it?
Well, I'm actually, you know, working on a few other things. Not at liberty to say, but I actually have you know, today is the 7th of May, and tomorrow I have a big presentation with a whole group of people, and it's pretty exciting. New, I like going in new directions. I like going where they're not, you know. And realistically, where they're not is the future.
That was my next question, is where do you see the future of broadcasting?
It's, you know, it's not going to be like it was. You know, it's absolutely not. I have to be honest, I wouldn't want Les Moonves' job. That's a tough job, you know, because next year they're going to have smaller audiences. And the programming's not going to be cheaper. It's going to cost more because there's more buyers. And so that's a pretty tough business. And they're working on this kind of margin now, you know. I will even tell you King World at the end wasn't as much fun because they started using words that no one ever talked to me about. You know, you're mature, you know. I said, nobody's ever used that word with me before. But, you know, we weren't able to have those just, you know, geometric increases anymore. You know, the guys, I actually met the guys from Google, you know, and they're feeling the same pressures, you know. They were a brilliant idea. It's gone on to unbelievable heights, but you know, their stock is down considerably from where it was at the height, and they're feverishly trying to figure out how to get it back up. And that's tough. The other one's more fun, you know. So and a lot of the corporate stuff I didn't really like, you know, and Roger too. He said, "Stop buying new businesses, will you?" He said, "Every time you open it up, we have to work harder." And it's true. I started looking at companies to buy, and I said, I would never buy this company. I never want to work for it. Why am I buying it? So, but that's what a lot of corporate people have to do. You know, they have to, you know, constantly show new revenue streams, new growth. And you know something? The truth is it can't grow to the sky anymore. There are going to be some dramatic changes, and they can't buy all the channels. There are too many ways into the community. I mean, into the home, right? The phone company has 1,000 channels now in markets, and they're expanding. You know, cable doesn't like that. You know, cable, all of a sudden everybody thought they were the monopoly. They got phone companies to go against, and then you got the satellite companies, and then the internet. And so it's like Tombstone. It's wide open.
What about the programming itself?
It's going to be the same. That's the part I like. You know.
What advice would you give to someone going into the business today on the executive level?
Well, I'd have to say, you know, obviously the advice I would give a lot of them would be in you know, giving them certain principles. Because the truth is they see the business better than I do. You know. I'm from another era, really. You know, I'm not really as comfortable with my BlackBerry as I am my remote, you know. So, so you know, my son and his generation, and he's 12 years old. My daughter's 18. My youngest daughter's 10. Their world's different than my world. You know, I grew up with, believe it or not, for a short period of time, we had party lines, you know, and then we got, oh my God, we got a color phone. It's not black. You know, and it was a dial, and then we got the push button. Those were big deals, you know. We had 3 networks. We actually had 3 independents in New York. You know, that's pretty phenomenal. Well, out here you had 4, you know, but now there are hundreds of channels, and the truth is there's so many new ways to get programming into the home. And there really is a sea change with the viewers. You know, my son watches, he doesn't watch ABC like I watched it, or CBS and NBC. He watches other networks. He doesn't even think they're that good, you know? So they have a different perspective. So all I can say is that I would deal from the basic principles. One, you have to know what you're doing. There's no substitute for learning and doing. You know, experience is one of the greatest tools to grow. And the only way you get experience is by actually doing it. You know, making mistakes. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, because you really do learn more from them. The shows that didn't work quickly, we learned a lot more from the ones that went through the roof quick. And the other aspect is, you know, I would say, do what you want to do. You have to really, you know, love what you're doing. You can make money doing anything, but if you don't love it, boy, what a waste. Because you know something, we're all coming through here once, and it's a pretty short journey. I mean, I look at this white hair, and I can't believe I'm 60 years old. You know, I look, at pictures, and I see that not everybody there is still alive. You know, I've lost a member of my family, my brother, a sibling, and a partner. So there is definitely an end to this program. So what we can't change that. But I got to tell you, and I don't do it all the time. My wife helps me tremendously. We have to appreciate today. We have to appreciate these moments. I personally have to appreciate watching my kids grow, because sometimes I go into different time zones. You know, I think about what happened, you know, what's going to happen next week, next year. What about happened last year? We don't always think about what we're doing today. And when you do that, you miss a lot, you know. So now I had an obsession with my business. And that I don't think was very good either, but I didn't get married until I was later in life. So that was a smart thing. But I really, really loved what I did. And I still do. You know, the entertainment business is fun. You know, they don't all work. I did a Broadway show a few years ago, you know, with a friend of mine. It didn't work, you know. I even told him, I said, Broadway shows are terrible investments. And he was a great producer of comedies, and this one was on John Lennon. It's called Lennon. And I said, I don't do Broadway shows, but this one I got to do. I said, you know, let me, you know, send me over the property and we'll look at the deal. And I said, the deal really is lousy, but, you know, I'll do it. I said, but what's Yoko's involvement? She have final say? Well, yeah. I said, look, I'll just put a little in, okay? I said, if you can get that out, I'll finance the whole thing. He said, no, she's fantastic. And this and that. I said, I'm telling you. And anyway, the show, he was humanely put to bed in death in a month, you know. It should have been bigger than Love in Las Vegas, you know, the Cirque du Soleil with the Beatle music. But, you know, when you have a Broadway show with 90 seconds of Beatle music, that's a problem, you know. And I will say, this one line in the play, I think, is indicative of where it was going to go, you know. John looking into the camera. Without Yoko, I'm nothing. So, but, you know, something, I was excited about it, you know, and that one didn't work. And I'm working on some other things that I think are very, very, very exciting. And actually in the event television business. That's what I'm looking at.
Well, we're looking forward to knowing what that is at some future date.
Yeah.
Our last question that we ask our interviewees is, how would you like to be remembered?
I don't know. You know, I don't think people are remembered, quite honestly. I think the people that remember us are people that we're related to, and very few people know who Bill Paley was. I don't think there's going to be a lot of people that really know about the King World success in 5 or 10 years, but my family and friends will hopefully remember me as somebody that they loved and respected and admired and and had a good time with, and that's and people I've done business with. I like the people that I've done business with, which, by the way, most of them are older than me. So I'm not sure there's going to be that many, young guys around that. But who knows? In the future, we're always dealing with, like we said, this new world of technology, and it's all going to be about programming. It's going to be the same as it was when I came through. It's going to be about news. It's going to be talk shows. It's going to be game shows. It's going to be soap operas. It's going to be court shows. It's going to be sitcoms, dramas. It's going to be variety shows. It's going to be sports, children's programming. The future is going to be all of that. And so from that point, I think it's a very exciting business. More ways to get to the public, but I don't know. I just think it would be. I don't know. It's a tough question for me to answer. Never thought about it. I would like that people think I was pretty good at what I did.
I think they will. Thank you so much for this sharing
you.
story.
Thanks.